All right. Hey, Joel, you here, Total Expert, with my good friend Julian Hebron for another episode of our LinkedIn Live series. Excited to be having another conversation today, Julian, about some super relevant and timely topics. I know we're going to be diving in to the purchase war discussion, and really, you know, you're an organization, a lender, an executive, a banker, a lender that's in mortgage right now. How do you win in these conditions with a lot of changes happening, and really what are some of the trends and kind of cutting edge things that we're seeing in the market? So let's get us kicked off, buddy.
Cool, man. Hey, everybody. Hey, Joe. It's super fun to be here. I'll just make a quick note for everybody that if you want to make comments, make them, and then they'll come in and we can address them as we go. But we have a bunch of stuff we want to cover today, and we think and hope that we're going to show you some stuff that you haven't seen about what's going on with the purchase market shift. But just let's get right into it. Are we even really in a purchase market? We know that the 10-year note has dropped quite a bit, mostly because of first the adverse market fee being removed, and then really from the COVID Delta variant becoming a greater concern. So what has this done to rates? It's brought them back down to like 2.875-ish, which is the same level that basically that we were at, you know, during most of the quarantine lockdown period. So here's the bottom line. The MBA updated the data yesterday. Yes, they did add 102 billion to Q3 for refis. They added another 24 billion to Q4 for refis. So, you know,
but outlook for 2022 really stayed the same. So
utterly unchanged.
Yeah. So this year, and let's be, you know, we got some context here. On a percentage basis, they added 100 billion to volume projection for Q3. On a percentage basis, it's not maybe as astronomical. It's not as big of an impact as maybe I would have expected for rates coming down. So really the result of that, sort of all of that happening, is it's still going to be critically important to be able to execute in a purchase environment and win your share of purchase business going into 2022. And you need to be making decisions on how to do that now, right? I mean, that's really the story.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to do one last quick market note, which is kind of an interesting one for the wonks out there. If we compare that today's rate levels and the historical rate levels going back to, I took this back to March 1 so that we could, March 1 of last year. You can see that MBS was higher when rates were at those lows during the lockdown periods. And now MBS has done well, but the benchmark coupon has traded well, but we are lower in rate. Why? Pricing is sharper. You're not controlling for capacity anymore. The adverse market fee has dropped out, and capital markets desks are like, hey, go get it. Get the refis, get the purchases. So it's pretty great.
Yeah, go get the volume. I mean, really, the difference in the executive conversations that I'm having right now is organizations are saying there's not so much business coming in that they're concerned about fulfillment, right? Exactly. Operations were scaled up. So they're saying, hey, let's be aggressive. Let's open up the gates and let's bring in as much business as we can, versus last year really was a different story. The volume was just coming like a tsunami. And so they were able to just fatten up margins. So that's the environment difference today.
That's exactly right. And just so everyone knows, like, we're going to actually do some deeper margin stuff as part of a subsequent part of this series. But for now, let's stick with the purchase market stuff. So it's like this. Everyone knows this data, but this is fresh as of yesterday. So, you know, let's look at the two bars, the 21 and 22, right? So we go from 10.35 million loans this year. I like to think of the purchase market in terms of units more so than volume. You'll see that we'll drill into units more in a second. To 6.37 million loans next year. But look what happens. Let's make this very stark, right? This just zooms in a little bit more on this. So you're increasing your purchase share by 55%, 48% purchase market, 75% purchase market is a 55% increase. But your total amount of loans, actual loans that are going to happen next year, purchase wise, are actually down. They're not down by much, but when go ahead.
And I'm a little bit skeptical. I think that number, depending on if they get some of the supply chain things figured out, some of the builders we're having conversations with, right, as they figure out that some of the supply chain challenges that have slowed down capacity of new units hitting the marketplace. I feel that number is a little conservative, but we'll see what happens, right?
Yeah, and that's why we do look at this stuff monthly. It's updated every month,
Yeah,
and this
yeah.
is the stuff that was updated yesterday, which was good timing because we do want to make sure that we're being as accurate as we can with the rate adjustments. But nevertheless, this is a pretty great market to be operating in. Let me just show you by quarter. If you look at the bars, the 4 bars on the right, that's this year. That's just kind of the numbers across the top: 974, 1248, 1271, 1248. That's how many units in the are going to happen each quarter this year. So we're in Q3, 1,271,000 purchase units for everybody. Next year, it's very, very, very similar, right? It's just that you don't have the refis next year. So it's a little bit more stark. So with that said, let's talk about this in a market context, and let's get real about units per LO. Okay.
And so I would rephrase that question slightly in saying, how do you win, right, in this market,
Yes.
and how do you win disproportionately and grab a market share increase that is gonna outpace your competition, right? That's really what we want to get into. So let's roll on this topic.
Absolutely. So everyone knows this. I'm just putting up the headlines. And why do I say bidding wars are going viral? Because this used to be a high price market phenomenon. I came up as an originator in a high price market, and bidding wars has just always been like, that's just part of my DNA. It's not part of everyone's DNA until this year. So the good news, you want to talk about winning? Most of you guys know now, like, you better vet that property on every single offer that goes out, not just pre-approve that borrower. Like, you got to know exactly what's going on. At the property level.
And I think as a lender also, one of the kind of the hidden, in my opinion, hidden things in this environment, as a lender, this is an opportunity for you to really elevate as an advisor, right? You're seeing a lot of people frustrated, multiple bidding wars, particularly if you're getting to that buyer after they've been in the process and you somehow got access to that buyer. You have the ability to kind of elevate yourself above the competition and strategize on deal structure and those types of things to really make your offer as attractive as possible, right? I know some of our customers, some of the execs that I talk with, they're really working with their sales organization to say, okay, now's your time to really elevate your game and give advice. How do you structure deals? How do you be as competitive as possible with your contingencies and the terms and the closing time frame and all of those things? And how do you have an airtight approval letter that gives people comfort and confidence that you're going to be able to perform, right? So there's really some hidden things, in my opinion, that as a lender, there's opportunity for you to differentiate in this environment.
Agree. One last note on that. I'm going to connect that to what I was saying. I was just saying it too fast, but everyone, I think, is great at pre-approving borrowers, even if you don't have underwriting pre-underwrites for purchases, which most orgs don't have right now because there's so many bids going on.
Yeah.
So you got to make sure that your pre-approval is nails, but it's not just the borrower, it's each property. And so this is the discipline as you shift from refi to purchase of like vetting each property, knowing where the hair is on those properties, not just is it going to appraise, what's the deferred maintenance, all that stuff. So Joe, that goes to all that advisory that most folks are good at, but some might be a little rustier on, but that's how you win. So with that said, though, let's go ahead.
Let's roll. No, let's keep going.
We'll go deeper. So here's the thing. Everyone talks that studies this stuff. They're like, here's how many purchases there's going to be this year. Sort of 7 million new and existing home sales this year, 7.4 next year. That's the total sales. The actual financed sales going from our previous slide is 4,921,000 units as of the latest updates as of yesterday.
And just for those of you that may not follow that, so basically the balance of that is people paying cash.
That's right? Correct. Yes, exactly. So, so here it is. This is the market. Now, Joe, I do want you to comment on this because this math, how we get to 8 purchases per LO, is predicated on some data you can see in the footer about non-bank and depository
Yeah.
LOs. And you think this number's high?
I think the number of LOs is inflated because there's a lot of people with an MLS license on the depository side that aren't actively originating. But even if you take it and you say it's 150,000 LOs or 200,000, whatever the number is, it's still not. Even if you say it's 20 units per LO in 2021, it's still not a huge amount of units, right? So every unit, every 2, 3, 4 extra units that you can get for that originator is really meaningful. And so if I'm an executive owner on the management team at a lender right now, and I'm saying we want to be as competitive as possible, the question that I'm asking is, how do we get our people as smart as possible about their business, and how do we get them to be able to maximize the amount of deal flow they do, right? Really take who's operating at a high level. How do we systematize that across the organization? And we've obviously been fortunate to get inside a lot of companies that have done that pretty successfully.
Absolutely. And so with that said, I do want to kind of tie this number to this number.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah,
context, right? This was a study that Forrester did for us in our customer base, and really this is not an advertisement for Total Expert per se, but what it does speak to is that using the data and systematizing and really automating best practices across your organization will lead to meaningful incremental volume. And I think that's the number one thing as an organization right now. I'm looking at these numbers and I'm saying, I got this many purchase units out there. How do I take my organization and how do I improve the amount of units that we're getting? Well, the first thing I want to do is say, hey, I know that I have a certain amount of deals that are hitting the trash can because we're not following up with them. The applications are coming in, they're getting into multiples, and it's taking 3-4 months for them to actually get the home. And we're not staying close to that buyer, right? Or that borrower. How do we do that? And the answer can be automation, a combination of automation and human touch. And it's just leveraging systems at an enterprise level and saying, all right, sales organization, here's what we know works. Here are the best practices. We're going to run this playbook for you and enable you to be smarter and more efficient with your business, right? And if you do that, you're going to grow and you're going to get a bigger share of those units. And that's really what those numbers speak to.
so let's keep going. This is kind of just a very basic sort of visual setup of what I see. If I pull up, I'm part of the Salesforce, I pull up my phone, I open my laptop, this is what I get every morning. So can you talk about this in general, and then I'm going to tie it to some purchase
Sure.
market data?
In general, it's a really exciting time to be in the industry right now because, and you're seeing this. Blend talks about this a lot. Simple Nexus, a lot of the vendors that are in our ecosystem have made tremendous progress about getting access to the data that you need to get smarter about your business. Okay, and that's one of the reasons we're so bullish on the industry and the organizations that really are saying, hey, let's take advantage of this. And what this is speaking to is the ability to take the information, the data about your customers and prospects, and then prioritize who you should be taking action with, what action you should be taking, but most importantly, the timing of that, right? So when should I be following up? And then having that enterprise level system that I can plug and play instead of sort of what happens today for most organizations that aren't doing these types of things. Is what you get is it's sort of just by default, whatever that particular originator or team kind of decides to do that given day, what gets prioritized ends up being just by default, whatever kind of happens. And what we've learned is that the very best are intentional about using the data, getting smart about the business, and then prioritizing who they're talking to and when based on what that data is telling them.
So let's keep going. Let me bring in the purchase market context here. So you've pre-approved your borrower. You're in the bidding war phase. Long story short, this is like the current NAR data this year. It takes 8 weeks for somebody to find and close on a home. Okay.
Yeah.
So they get picked off. They meet a new listing agent who introduces them to a new realtor. Like, how does that methodology help people, help those sales forces stay in touch and not lose those deals?
The most important word on this entire page and maybe really in this entire segment is the word engage. Okay. And under engage, a lot of times you can partner the word engage with educate and advise in there as well, right? Because that's part of the engagement. But how do you engage? How do you communicate? Are you communicating in a high quality way in multiple channels with kind of the human touch in there? So you're not just sending them a BS auto generated email that sounds like it's just vanilla and it's not for them. Are you following up with a text message? It could be automated, but it can feel personalized, saying, "Hey, it's been a week, right? How's the search going?" And things like that. So are you communicating in a
Did you
high
see
quality
rates
way?
dropped this week?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's how can you communicate? How can you increase the level of communication, improve the quality of that communication, and then the frequency of it through that until they buy, until they get into that home. And then obviously customer for life starts there. But it's really the organizations and the teams and the originators that are world class at running their business do that very well. They engage and keep their arms wrapped very tightly around those customers, potential customers, through the buying journey. And they do it not just with one directional push, but they do it in a very kind of human way, right? They're treating each person it's very conversational.
Yeah, and it has to be, because again, you guys, like, for everyone who has, a giant pile of pre-approved buyers who are shopping and getting outbid, you bid them at higher rates even 2 weeks ago, and that's when they stray. So don't forget that. I can't emphasize that enough.
I think the most important thing is, remember, these are humans, right? You got a human on the other side. It's a transaction, and a lot of lenders, you got to shift into the mindset, human first. These humans, they have emotions that go up and down as they're out in the market and they're doing the home search. And so you have to be able to kind of ebb and flow with that natural journey, that home ownership journey that they go through.
But feeding your pricing engine into that, like, that's the type of stuff, like, that's the level of maturity that you have gotten to where it's like, hey, Julian pre-approved me at 3%, and I got to go up on the next one, and I'm seeing that rates just went to 2.75. Like, what's up with Julian? If I'm not on that, I'm out. And that's just the way it works.
You're not taking care of that person. Somebody else is going to be trying to, or they're going to feel like you don't care about them, right? So getting smart about your business, for sure, critical.
All right, so let's go to what the headline of this was, because this part is super critical. So we'll get right into it. So realtors still control the deals. End of story. 88% of buyers per NAR this year found the home they bought through a realtor. So if you're not controlling those relationships, you're in trouble. I want to kind of make sure that we have some context on the CFPB part, but everyone talks about, like, the ground game of realtors. But if I could, Joe, can I do the data part here?
Sure. I know you love that. So go for it, buddy.
Very much.
And I love it too. So,
so here's, you guys, don't worry too much about absorbing every single thing. I get that this is small, but I'm going to show you 2 quick slides of some of this data that Joe and his team is starting to play with, where you can start to go in and be like, do I really know all the realtors that I work with or that I want to work with, what they're doing. Can I drill into their city, then their office, then the individual realtors, and know exactly what their volume is, how many units, what kind of loans were associated with each one of their deals. Like, this to me is insane. Like, when I started seeing what you guys are cooking up for the purchase market over the next couple quarters for your users, I was like, what? So then I'll go one more slide and then I'll ask you to comment on this stuff. But then here's another way of doing it. Like, everyone's like, oh, my realtors are loyal. Really? Because when you start looking at the data and you say, well, let me go into that real estate office, and then let me go into the loan officers that are killing it in that real estate office and or with that specific realtor, then you can do the same thing and get extremely granular like this. So you can say, are my realtors cheating on me? Which loan officers are dominant? And am I going to compete with that? Or am I going to try to just recruit those loan officers because we know how great they are,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah, and
Joe,
what
yeah,
this speaks to, right, is, I mean, we're in I've referred to it as the data arms race, okay? And it's about, how can I get as much data and insights about my business, and then how can I take action on those things, right, to just be smarter about what's going on in my business, and how I'm navigating it. And this just speaks to that theme, bringing in intelligence on who those realtor partners are. Are they cheating on you? Are they loyal to you? Which ones do you want to be going after and targeting, and just giving you the ability to have intelligence on the business, but then most importantly, then take some action on that, right? In the form of following up with workflow, communication, emails, messaging, those types of things. But getting that data, accessibility and insights from that data, and then taking action on it, that's really where tremendous value can be created. And that's when we talk about that data arms race. This is a part of that for sure, is getting the intelligence, not just about your customer, which we're huge on, of course, getting as much intelligence as you can on the customer, but also your partners.
yeah, and I just thank you for letting me show that one. I'm sure your product team is you know kicking me under the table right now because it's coming in the next couple quarters, but it reconciles that stuff coming into your system reconciles with these official, if you will, shift to the purchase
Yeah.
market over the next 2 quarters. So the ability to see all that realtor data and which loan officers are doing, serving which realtors best, but then automating communications both to those realtors and or to recruit certain loan officers. That's the gist of that whole thing and that whole
Yeah.
initiative, correct? I mean,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, honestly, that's killer. But you guys, you cannot talk about realtor partnerships without talking RESPA. So let's get into it. So here's the deal, 2015 versus 2020, okay? So 2015, I know I was running a joint venture at that time, excuse me, leading up to that time. And this memo came out and everybody was like, oh, okay, we're heading towards the end of the joint venture realm. We actually, all the firms got signals of this before it actually happened and shut down. Wells Fargo shut down joint ventures the year before. We shut down our big joint venture in San Francisco with a company that's now owned by Compass the year before. Okay. Just before the election last year, that whole mandate was rescinded. That was probably the peak of what a lot of us had called regulation through enforcement. It wasn't actual law, but it was an official compliance bulletin, which was to be taken as law, that said MSAs are like not good and we don't like them. That was rescinded just before the election. The administration has changed, as we know. And this is some of the language now of the new tone as we're ramping up. And we haven't even gotten fully into the new regime yet. You know,
Yeah.
they're still
Yeah,
ramping.
there's no question. The sources that we have that are sort of close to the CFPB, and a lot of things that are happening are essentially saying it's definitely skewing back the other direction, to where they're going to be looking at compliance. They're going to be looking at these partnerships again. The level of enforcement, who knows? But if I'm an organization, it's fairly it's fairly straightforward that I should be smart about it, right? And I should have my bases covered from audit level reporting and just basic compliance and frameworks. I think there's some that have been running pretty fast and loose. As one of my good friends who's an attorney in the space talks about. And I think you're going to see that kind of reined in a little bit, and at least getting more guardrails around some of those relationships. So I want to be thoughtful about that.
And I'll be more stark. Regulation through enforcement is all but back. These
Yeah.
signals that we're getting, to me, I was on the
I don't want
front
to be
lines
that.
of,
I didn't want to be that
I
guy
will
that,
do it. And here's
yeah,
why. Because I shut down a joint venture that was like a career level decision amongst me and my lender and real estate partners. And it was one of the hardest decisions we all made together ever. And then, Joe, not long after, if I go to the next slide here, is when we discovered TE. And
yeah,
the DNA of the purchase business for TE was predicated on this idea that every action that I take, whether automated or manual, is RESPA-safe, because
sure.
I can build all this stuff in with my realtors and have an audit trail automatically for everything I do in terms of what happened, right? So can you just unpack that for a second?
Yeah, for sure. I think so. Our thesis originally when we started the business, and obviously we've expanded so much since those days to now really end to end full customer journey, CRM, and all those, and a lot of just data driven things that we do. But a core is still a compliance framework that allows you at an enterprise level to provide a platform in that framework to go ahead and execute those partnerships and show that you're RESPA compliant, just to keep you safe, right? And so you can set these things up and allow your business to be run. I think what's important to understand, and the data shows it. If I'm in lending, and I think there's some argument on who's going to be up the funnel the farthest. And I think some would tell you that it's starting to see how lenders that are getting really smart with data are going to control more of the relationship than realtors. But today it's, skewed heavily. The realtors got the relationship at the beginning of the transaction, and the partnership between a home. As a homeowner, I know I want to buy a home. I need money, and I need somebody that can walk me through the transaction. How that's going to evolve, is going to remain to be seen. But I definitely know that I need those two components today, right? And so if I know I need those two components, going to market with my partnerships in the realtor side of things is a smart way to approach the business, because it brings me up funnel in that customer buying journey.
So here's the thing. The same attorneys that we both talk to all say the same thing. RESPA is like the Constitution. It's not going to change. And even amendments are incredibly difficult. And you can do what you're talking about, which is one-stop shop, even if all the services aren't under one roof, as long as you are properly documenting all this at scale and at speed,
Yeah, yeah.
which is really
Give
where you have
give you
matured
efficiency and
into.
velocity, and that's where
Yes.
we've matured into, is we want to give you the framework to say go fast and let your people run and execute these strategies, but have a foundation that keeps you safe.
That's the most important takeaway, you guys, is that you can turn your sales forces loose and let them be creative, but not get the organization in trouble.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
everyone, I think, to your point, I won't go so far as to call it fast and loose, but everyone has gotten a little away from that because the refi mindset is just different. But now
yeah,
we're back to this. And I think I appreciate you letting me bring it up. I know it's not
yeah.
the thing you like to bring up the most, but the RESPA compliance DNA of how you power this whole thing is something that I don't think can be
Yeah, I mean, we
under.
still look at, as we've expanded the organization, we still look at, if I think about the theme of financial health and wellness, home ownership is still at the center of that, right? And that home
Yep.
ownership journey, which is filled with complexity and rules and data and all of the things that really make it difficult to navigate. I mean, those are the problems that we're pretty passionate about tackling. But it really all rolls up to, hey, home ownership is going to be a central theme to financial health and wellness for millions and millions of Americans. And, we're just excited to be a part of the process to continue modernizing.
Yeah, going down to a 3 trillion per year market says enough about how big of a deal is. But with that said, here's you guys what we're going to do next time. It's 2 Thursdays from today. So it's August 4th. So we're going down to 621 billion in refis next year. So you're like, oh wow, that's how could you be in the golden age of refis instead of a bust? Why? Because we have record equity and record non-housing debt. And this goes to the advisory component of how to be extra smart about refis. So that's what we're going to do next time and peel into the data and talk about all those things that are associated with the big market trends that actually make it a golden age if you're doing it right. So we look forward to having you guys on there, and we really appreciate you coming in today too. And Joe, thank you as well.
Yeah, echo that. Thanks for joining us, guys. Looking forward to the next session. Julian, as always, thanks for joining me today. Love the conversation.
Absolutely.
Cheers, everyone.